In one of my favourite videos on Inside about a month back, I spoke briefly about the introduction of video games as pieces of art. Coincidentally, browsing Steam in an attempt to find more ways of escaping the cerebral hemorrhoid that is my life, I came across Gris. Gris? No, not Gris. Gris? That's probably supposed to be Gris, but I don't want to bring up repressed trauma.
This car could be systematic, hydromatic, ultramatic. Why could be grease lightning?
So I'm gonna just go with Gris. Where Inside is the cryptic edgy emo kid who chain smokes ciggies at break time, Gris feels more like its straight edge Bible reading golden child cousin who's always wearing a frock for some reason. Like, what even is a frock? Like, why? I don't know. They're related on the surface, yet fundamentally very, very different. Both play as platformers in a 2D space, with a large aspect of gameplay being the absorption and subsequent interpretation of your surroundings. In both games, a lot is left with the player to make some form of sense of it all. With Inside, there's more of a structured external story for players to take in, and whether playing through it amounts to an internal realization of some sort or not is heavily dependent on the player. On the other hand, the settings in Gris always felt very symbolic from the get-go, like they represented different points of an internal strife in the character. As such, I don't just think that there's a higher likelihood for it to incite some form of introspection, but that this is actually probably a large driving force to playing. If you were to play through all of Gris, yet still refuse to accept video games as valid mediums for works of art, let me tell ya, I would fucking probably be quite upset. The visuals in Gris are hands down one of my favourites of any video game I've seen thus far. You can pretty much stop at any time while playing, and what you're left with on your screen will look like an artwork. You begin in this blank scene of pure white. Vast, empty landscapes stretch into the distance beyond the monumental, dilapidated architecture of the foreground. The jagged lines and crisp geometry of the shattered statues, crumbling pillars, and endless flights of stairs, god fucking damn it, contrast with the smooth, flowing curvature of the main character's dress and hair blowing in the wind. Before long, we're presented with a significant point in the development of the game's narrative: the introduction of our first colour. Colour plays a heavy role in driving the symbolic impact of Gris's journey, and playing through the game definitely gave me a newfound appreciation for colours that I originally thought I didn't like. I'd still probably rather see less colour in exchange to be able to eat Macca's nuggets, but hey, you win some, you lose some. We associate red with anger and pain, yet also with passion, and the losing team in League of Legends. Green with life, renewal, or the one Taco can't differentiate from red. Oh, it's blue! No, wait, I think it's green. Yeah, it's green. No, that's definitely blue. Wait, but that bit's green. No, it's probably more blue than green, definitely. Okay, fuck, it's green. I thought I was just the celiac one. Blue being the colour of the ocean and sky might represent serenity or stability. Black with grief or death. The internal conflict and development in Gris is pictured in its external scenery and gameplay. The symbolic value of each colour, as well as the different abilities that Gris learns to keep progressing, really drive the meaning of the game's journey home. A superb video by Daryl Talks Games goes over a prominent theory on the game's meaning that proposes that each colour in the journey represents one of the 5 stages of grief, and the progression through each of these different worlds parallels the progression through Gris's internal emotions: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I'm not gonna lie, he puts a lot of great stuff forward that's really hard to deny, and does a better job at analysing this game than I ever could. But what I will say is that I'm always a tad hesitant to place one right answer to how we interpret games like this. If you're content spending 20 minutes watching someone speak about it in great depth, then that's totally fine, and that's definitely the video you want to watch. However, I do feel that there's still plenty more to gain from playing it firsthand. This way, the experience you take away from playing is placed on you to decipher, and as a result, is likely to be on a much deeper, more personal level. If you can't be asked for either of those options, then hey, at least you're watching this shit instead. Most of the fun you'll have playing Gris is from being absorbed in how effectively it achieves a sensory experience, and not often is this a buying point for games that aren't 18+.
Oh my god.
The soundtrack is so diverse and so effective. You'll go from an atmospheric ringing piano to an intense string orchestra back to a serene flute tune, but the transitions from one track to another are always seamless. This is huge for immersion. The track doesn't abruptly change each time you reach a new map, but instead transforms at the same gradual pace that the game's world does. This is also mirrored in how smoothly the camera manages to cleverly choose how much the player sees, being barely noticeable in doing so. A multitude of visual and audible details synergize towards the central priority of complete and utter immersion, something that's critical for the type of game that Gris is. I think the choice for Gris to be a game over an animated film or something solidifies this idea of it being this immersive experience even more. A great deal of the enjoyment in playing comes from taking everything in, and being in control of this process lets you explore and notice all the little details at your own pace. The subtle tapping of Gris's feet on the floor, zooming effortlessly through underwater caverns, rays of light piercing through buildings, intricate feminine statues, watercolor-inspired background effects, little creatures you can interact with, bringing plants to life through singing. Explore... Wait, you can do that? So we're out here. We found a stick. It's technically a plant that was once alive, so we're going to bring it back to life. Okay. Pursuit story. Make a suit story. Make a suit story. Make a suit story. You get so immersed in Gris that when this dickhead eel comes after you all of a sudden, you're so on edge and genuinely feel threatened despite knowing that you can't actually die in the game. With Inside, there was no doubt in my mind that it's very much a game, with difficulty and the potential to fail. With Gris, this isn't as clear cut. You control Gris freely, and there's an element of progression, gaining new abilities necessary to reach new areas, and in doing so, it definitely gets you thinking with the puzzle solving needed to move forward, but you can't die or fail. Do I think this is a bad thing? Not really, to be honest. This kind of thing is not something that always has to be clear cut. I see it more as a spectrum. I think Inside has more complexity when it comes to gameplay, but this doesn't necessarily mean that Gris being a game was the wrong move. It's just important to think about when inevitably comparing the two of them by trying to give Gris a score. As a sensory experience, Gris has very little to complain about at all. An easy 9 out of 10, mainly because I don't think I'll ever be confident enough to give something a perfect score. But in an attempt to measure it on the same scale that I do with all the other games in this shite series, in terms of how enjoyable a game it was for me, I'd give Gris a 7. The gameplay lacked a great deal of complexity, but that's because I didn't really need it. Unlike a lot of other games, you don't necessarily decide to play it just to have fun. It's a niche title that will appeal a great deal to some and not so much to others, as is the beauty of indie games. All in all, Gris was a hallmark movie for its time that will go down to be remembered for its funky sing-alongs for decades to come. Oh, yeah, and thanks for 100 subscribers, I guess.